She looked like any other kid, a drawing of a rocket ship on her faded t-shirt, a mess of curly hair barely contained by a ponytail. Her sticker-covered activity book was splayed open on the tray table at seat 21B. As their Airbus A320 began its sickening, unnatural lurch towards the ground, nobody, not a single soul, could have guessed that the only person on board who could save them was a 12-year-old girl. And then the crackle of F-22 fighters split the cockpit's radio chatter, using a call sign that made every passenger who overheard it twist in their seats to stare at that little girl. 12-year-old Anya Petrova sat in seat 21B of Transstate's Air Flight 447, a perfect picture of a child traveling alone. Her unruly auburn curls escaped her ponytail, she wore a well-loved gray t-shirt with a cartoon rocket, and she was hugging a worn purple backpack covered in holographic planet stickers. Her sneakers dangled a good 6 inches from the floor, and she was completely absorbed in a graphic novel about intergalactic explorers, occasionally taking a sip of her cranberry juice. The flight attendant, a kind woman named Sarah, had checked on her twice. "You doing okay back here, sweetie? Need another juice?" Anya would just nod, offering a small, shy smile that adults found endearing. "I'm good, thank you. My aunt is picking me up in Denver." The other passengers saw exactly what they were meant to see. A businessman in 21C offered her a pack of gum before takeoff. An older woman in 21A asked if she was excited for her trip. They interacted with the mask, the carefully constructed identity of a quiet, polite kid on a flight without her parents. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Now back to our story. What none of them knew, what they couldn't possibly comprehend, was that Anya Petrova was one of the most guarded secrets in the United States military. At 12, she was the youngest pilot ever integrated into a Black Ops flight program, flying experimental hypersonic craft since she was 10. Her small size and unique neural wiring made her the only person capable of withstanding the G-forces and processing the data streams from next-generation reconnaissance aircraft, prototypes, so secret most generals didn't know they existed. Her call sign, Nova, was given to her after she successfully landed a prototype that had disintegrated mid-flight around 3 previous adult pilots. Her reaction times weren't just fast, they were predictive. Her mind processed telemetry in a way that defied known science. But Anya's work was so classified her own parents thought she was at a STEM-focused boarding school for gifted children. Only a handful of people in the entire defense infrastructure knew that America's most advanced aerospace technology was being pushed to its limits by a 7th grader who still debated which cereal had the best marshmallows. Captain David Evans was a 20-year veteran of the skies, but he'd never felt a vibration like the one that rattled his teeth at 3:15 p.m. over the plains of Kansas. Transstate's Air Flight 447 was cruising at a serene 38,000 feet, carrying 178 souls from Chicago to Denver, when a low, gut-wrenching groan echoed up from the floorboards. "Mark," he said, his voice tight, turning to his first officer, Mark Chen, "you feel that?" Mark Chen's eyes were already darting across the instrument panel. The tremor wasn't turbulence. It was mechanical, angry. It was the sound of metal screaming. "Feel it? I can taste it," Mark replied, his knuckles white on the yoke. "Engine 1 is giving us hell. I don't know what it's giving us. The readings are all over the place." Yes, they could handle a single engine failure. The procedure was drilled into them, a mantra of checklists and calm execution. But before they could even begin the shutdown procedure for Engine 1, a cascade of alarms erupted for Engine 2. A symphony of shrieking alerts filled the cockpit, the instrument panel flashing a Christmas tree of red and amber warnings. "We're losing both," Captain Evans shouted over the din, his voice laced with a disbelief that was quickly turning to ice-cold dread. "This is impossible. I'm declaring an emergency. Mayday, 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 Denver Center. This is Transstate's 447. We are declaring an emergency." His transmission was clipped, professional. betraying none of the terror flooding his veins. "We have a dual-engine failure. Repeat, dual-engine failure, requesting immediate vectors to the nearest suitable airport." The voice from air traffic control was unnervingly calm. "Trans-States 447, Denver Center copies your mayday. State your intentions." "We need an airport now. We can't hold this altitude." As Captain Evans and First Officer Chen wrestled with the unresponsive controls, they realized their situation was far worse than a simple engine failure. They weren't just losing thrust, they were losing everything. The aircraft was becoming a multi-ton glider piloted by two men who knew, deep down, they were running out of time and sky. In seat 21B, Anya felt the change long before the captain's strained voice came over the intercom. Her entire young life had been a study in the language of aircraft in distress. She knew the specific harmonic frequency of a turbine blade shearing off, the sickening yaw that meant a complete loss of symmetrical thrust. Flight 447 wasn't in trouble. It was dying. But her orders were absolute, branded into her mind through years of relentless training. Never reveal your skills. Never compromise the program. Your identity is a matter of national security. Uphold the cover, no matter the cost. She clutched her purple backpack, the lives of 107 strangers resting on one side of a scale, and the future of America's aerial dominance on the other, and her programming told her to let the scale tip. The moment Trans-States Air Flight 447 squawked 7700, the universal code for an emergency, it lit up a board deep within the mountain fortress of NORAD. A civilian airliner in distress was routine, but one failing over the central United States, near sensitive military airspace, was an immediate red flag. "Sir," Captain Hannah Sterling reported to General Marcus Thorne, her voice echoing slightly in the command center, "we've got a civilian heavy in trouble. Looks like they're trying for Buckley Space Force Base as a divert." General Thorne, a man whose face seemed carved from granite, didn't look up from his tactical display. "Status?" "Trans-States 447, 178 souls, reporting catastrophic dual-engine failure. They're falling fast, sir." Falling, not descending. The word choice sent a chill through the room. "Scramble the Vipers," Thorne commanded, his voice a low rumble. "I want eyes on that bird yesterday. Full escort, full assessment. If they're putting down on our real estate, I want to know what's coming." Within 90 seconds, two F-16 Vipers from the 140th Wing were tearing through the sky, afterburners glowing like twin blue stars. Major Leo Riptide Gallo and Captain Eva Seraph Rostova were seasoned pilots accustomed to these escort missions. They were the sky's shepherds, there to guide a wounded sheep back to the fold. Denver Center, Viper 1 and Viper 2 are airborne, climbing to intercept Trans-States 447, Major Gallo transmitted, his voice steady. "Viper flight, Trans-States 447 is at flight level 290 and descending rapidly. Provide escort and real-time situational analysis." They prepared for the usual grim spectacle, a trailing smoke plume, a struggling crew. What they were about to encounter would rewrite every rule they'd ever known. As the F-16s streaked towards their target, a junior analyst at NORAD was running the passenger manifest through their security databases, a standard, if morbid, procedure. What he found made him physically stand up from his chair. General?" Staff Sergeant Kenji Tanaka's voice cracked. "Sir, you need to see this." "What is it, Sergeant?" "A passenger in seat 21B. Name is Anya Petrova. When I cross-referenced it, sir, I got a hit in the Stardust database. It has to be a glitch." General Thorne strode over to the console, and the world seemed to slow down. He saw the name, Anya Petrova. He saw the passenger manifest information, age 12. Then he saw the cross-referenced data from the most classified server in the entire military. Call sign Nova. Lead test pilot, Project Stardust, Groom Lake Facility. Clearance, Onyx level. The file detailed her role in the evaluation of experimental hypersonic aircraft. "That's a mistake," Thorne breathed, the words catching in his throat. "Run it again." "I've run it 6 times, sir. It's her. Anya Petrova, age 12, call sign Nova. She's our Stardust pilot." Thorne stared at the screen, a cold dread washing over him. Project Stardust was the military's crown jewel, a program so secret that its existence was denied even at the highest levels of the Pentagon, and its sole, irreplaceable pilot was a middle schooler. "Get me a secure line to Groom Lake," Thorne ordered, his voice dangerously quiet. "Now." The call was brief and terrifying. The voice from the desert test facility confirmed his worst fears. Anya Petrova was 12. Anya Petrova was Nova. And Anya Petrova was currently on a commercial airliner that was about to become a crater in a Kansas cornfield. "General," the voice from Groom Lake said, devoid of emotion, "if that plane goes down, we don't just lose our pilot. We lose the only person alive who can fly the next generation of deterrence. We lose everything." "Understood," Thorne replied, the single word carrying the weight of the world. On board Flight 447, the situation was spiraling out of control. Both engines were now nothing more than dead weight, and Captain Evans was pulling on the yoke with all his strength, fighting a losing battle against gravity. They were descending at an alarming rate. Denver was a fantasy. "We're not going to make it," First Officer Chen said, his voice flat with resignation. "Nearest runway is Buckley, but it's 25 miles. We'll be on the ground in 5 minutes, one way or another." It was then that a new voice cut through the chaos on a protected military frequency, a frequency the Airbus was equipped to monitor but rarely used. "Trans-States 447, this is Viper 1. We are informed you have Anya Petrova on board. We need to speak with Nova, immediately." In seat 21B, Anya's blood ran cold. Nova, her call sign, broadcast for the entire cockpit crew to hear. The businessman next to her, who had been praying moments before, looked at her, his face a mask of confusion. Did he just say your name? Did he call you Nova?" Before Anya could form a lie, Captain Evans's voice, strained and shaky, echoed through the cabin's PA system. "Anya Petrova, this is the captain. Please make your way to the cockpit immediately. We need your help." Every head on that plane snapped towards the small girl in the rocket ship T-shirt. Confusion warred with terror on their faces. How could a child possibly help? But the captain's plea wasn't a request. It was a prayer. Anya unbuckled her seatbelt, her small hands trembling, and stood up. As she walked down the aisle, through a sea of terrified, questioning eyes, she knew her secret life was over, one way or another. When Anya pushed open the cockpit door, Captain Evans and First Officer Chen stared as if they'd seen a ghost. They were expecting... Well, they didn't know what they were expecting, but it wasn't a child who barely came up to the height of the instrument panel. "You're Anya Petrova?" Captain Evans stammered, his mind struggling to reconcile the girl in front of him with the urgent military transmission. "Yes, sir," Anya replied, her voice small but steady, a jarring contrast to the blaring alarms. "And you're a pilot?" First Officer Chen asked, his tone dripping with incredulity. "Yes, sir. I test experimental aircraft for the Air Force." Chen just shook his head. How can a 12-year-old be a test pilot?" "Because I can handle G-forces that would kill an adult," Anya stated, not with arrogance, but with the simple finality of a mathematical truth. "And because I know what to do when everything goes wrong." Her eyes scanned the chaotic panel, and in seconds she processed the data with a speed that left the veteran pilots breathless. Despite her age, she saw not just the problem, but the ghost of a solution, a path through the impossible. "What's our altitude?" she asked, her voice cutting through their panic. 18,000 feet and dropping like a stone," Captain Evans answered. "We have maybe 4 minutes of flight time left. Buckley is 20 miles out." Anya's mind became a supercomputer, running calculations based on hundreds of simulated and real-world total system failures in aircraft that were barely designed to fly. "We can make it," she said with a chilling certainty, "but not the way you think. We have to fly the plane like a brick." "Viper 1, this is Nova," Anya said into the captain's headset, using her call sign for the first time in front of civilians. The response was immediate, filled with a reverence that shocked the two commercial pilots. "Nova, this is Viper 1. It's an honor, ma'am. What's your status?" Despite her age, Anya's voice now held the command authority of someone who had stared death in the face and won repeatedly. "Viper flight, I need you to get me emergency clearance for a dead stick landing at Buckley, and I need real-time wind shear data for the final approach, updated every 5 seconds. "Roger that, Nova. We're on it. The field is yours." What happened next would be studied for decades, a legend whispered in flight schools and military academies. A 12-year-old girl was now commanding the emergency landing of a commercial jetliner, escorted by two of the world's most advanced fighter jets. "Captain Evans," Anya said, turning to the stunned pilot, "I'm going to talk you through some maneuvers. They're not in your manual." "But you're just a kid," First Officer Chen protested, his training warring with the sheer insanity of the situation. "I'm a kid who has landed aircraft with no engines, no hydraulics, and half a tail," Anya replied, her gaze unwavering. "Trust me." Captain Evans looked from the terrified face of his co-pilot to the impossibly calm eyes of the child. He made the decision that would save 178 lives. "Okay, Nova, tell us what to do." While Anya worked with the flight crew, the F-16 pilots were getting a crash course on the Prodigy orchestrating this miracle. Back at NORAD, General Thorne had authorized the unsealing of a portion of Anya's file. "Viper 1, came the encrypted transmission from NORAD Command. "We're pushing you a data packet on Nova. You need to understand who you're flying with." Major Gallo and Captain Rostova's helmet displays lit up with text that seemed to be pulled from a science fiction novel. Anya Nova Petrova was not just a test pilot. She was the only pilot for Project Stardust. Comet has logged more hours in total failure scenarios than any active-duty pilot, the briefing read. Began simulation training at age 9. Has successfully recovered from system failures considered unsurvivable by our top engineers. "Leo, are you reading this?" Captain Rostova murmured over their private channel. "She's not just a pilot. She's some kind of... I don't even know what she is." "I know," Major Gallo replied, his eyes glued to the lumbering Airbus. "We're flying escort for a legend who still has a bedtime." The F-16 pilots watched, mesmerized, as the massive passenger jet began to behave in ways they'd never seen, executing subtle, precise maneuvers that squeezed every last inch of altitude from its powerless descent. What Anya did next was a master class in theoretical aerodynamics put into brutal, real-world practice. Using principles developed for experimental craft designed to re-enter the atmosphere, she began instructing Captain Evans how to manage the A320's energy not as a plane, but as a controlled falling object. "Captain Evans," she coached, her voice a lifeline in the cacophony of alarms, "forget your training. We're not flying an airplane anymore. We're guiding a projectile. It's all about energy management." She walked him through a series of terrifyingly precise adjustments to the flaps and rudder, treating the plane not as a single entity, but as a collection of airfoils to be manipulated. "Keep your nose down to maintain airspeed. We're going to trade altitude for distance. Every foot we drop is a foot closer to that runway." "This is insane," First Officer Chen muttered. "Standard procedure is to maintain best glide speed to maximize time in the air." "Standard procedure assumes you have options," Anya retorted without looking at him. "We have one. Land on that runway or land in that field. Your training is designed to save a working plane. My training is designed to save the pilot when the plane is already gone." The F-16 pilots could only watch in stunned silence as the powerless airliner executed a perfect sweeping arc towards Buckley, descending with a grace that should have been impossible. "Seraph, you seeing this glide path?" Major Gallo asked, his own instruments struggling to believe the data. "I wouldn't believe it if I wasn't watching it," Captain Rostova replied. "She's flying that bus like it's a high-performance glider. She's not just flying it, she's dancing with it." As Flight 447 began its final desperate approach to Buckley Space Force Base, Anya was running the entire operation. She had the F-16s calling out wind speeds, air traffic control clearing a path, and the commercial pilots performing actions that felt fundamentally wrong, yet were working perfectly. Buckley Tower, Trans-States 447 Heavy, final for runway 16, no power, Anya broadcasted, her voice preternaturally calm. "Be advised, we are on a non-standard high-energy approach." Trans-States 447 Buckley Tower, we have you in sight. The emergency crews are in position. Runway 16 is yours. But Anya knew it wasn't that simple. A dead stick landing in a heavy jet gave you exactly one chance. There were no go-arounds. "Viper flight," Anya transmitted. "I need you to call out my altitude from the ground every 100 feet. My instruments are unreliable." "Roger, Nova. We're your eyes." As they passed 3,000 feet, Anya initiated the final, most dangerous part of her plan, a maneuver designed for a nimble experimental craft, not a 90-ton passenger jet. "Captain Evans," she said, "what I'm about to tell you will feel wrong. We're going to dive." The final approach to Buckley's runway 16 was a thing of terrifying beauty. Anya guided Captain Evans through a steep descent designed to build up just enough kinetic energy for the final flare. "Maintain airspeed at exactly 150 knots, Anya commanded as they plunged through 1,000 feet. "Any slower, we drop short. Any faster, we'll never stop." The maneuver was so counterintuitive, so far outside the bounds of commercial aviation, that it had a name in the test program, the Reaper's Gambit. But Anya had used it to land shattered prototypes more times than she could count. "Nova, this is Viper 1, Major Gallo's voice crackled. "Your approach is perfect. Glide path is holding." "Copy that, Viper 1. Captain Evans, you're doing great. Just keep her steady." At 300 feet, a sudden crosswind slammed into the aircraft, trying to shove it off the center line. Captain Evans instinctively fought it, but Anya's voice cut through his reflex. "Easy rudder. Don't fight it. Use it. Let the plane's momentum carry you through." The Airbus A320's wheels slammed onto the asphalt with a bone-jarring impact, but Captain Evans, guided by the child beside him, held the plane straight. As they screeched down the runway, shedding speed, an army of fire trucks and ambulances raced alongside them. "Trans-States 447, welcome to Buckley," the tower broadcasted, the controller's voice thick with emotion. In the cabin, a stunned silence was broken by a single person clapping, then another, until all 176 passengers were cheering, weeping, and embracing, most of them still staring in disbelief towards the cockpit. As Trans-States Air Flight 447 slowed to a stop, the two F-16 Vipers did something unheard of. They pulled up on either side of the cockpit, and their pilots performed a crisp salute, a gesture of profound respect reserved for fallen comrades or living legends. "Nova, this is Viper 1, Major Gallo transmitted, his voice choked with awe. "That was the single greatest act of flying I have ever witnessed. You just saved 178 souls." "Thanks, Viper Flight," Anya replied, her voice suddenly that of a 12-year-old again. "Glad I could help." But her help had come at a cost. She had saved the flight, but in doing so, she had shattered her cover, exposing one of the nation's most critical military secrets. As the passengers deplaned onto the tarmac, many stopped to thank the small girl who stood quietly beside the pilots. The businessman from 21C just shook her hand, speechless. I don't understand," he said finally. "How did you know how to do that?" Anya gave him the same shy smile she had practiced for years. "I'm in a really advanced science club at school." Within hours, the story was a global phenomenon. Miracle at Buckley. 12-year-old girl lands crippled airliner. The headlines were a national security nightmare. Anya's carefully constructed secret life was gone, and with it, the plausible deniability of Project Stardust. "Anya," said General Olivia Rios in a sterile debriefing room at Buckley, "your actions were heroic. You saved 178 lives. You also just compromised a $50 billion defense program." "I know, General," Anya said, looking down at her sneakers, "but I couldn't just sit there. It wasn't logical." "We're not blaming you, Anya," General Rios said, her expression softening, "but we have a problem. Your life as a normal kid is over. The question is, what comes next?" The military had never faced a situation like this. Their most valuable asset was now a public hero. 2 weeks later, in a secure conference room at the Pentagon, Anya was offered a choice that would define the rest of her life. She could disappear into the classified world again, with a new name and a new identity, or she could step into the light. "Anya," General Rios said, sliding a folder across the polished table, "we are creating a new position for you, something that has never existed. We want you to become the first youth ambassador for aviation safety. We want you to teach civilian pilots the same techniques you used to save Flight 447. It was unprecedented. A 12-year-old would be tasked with redesigning emergency training protocols for the entire civilian aviation industry. "You proved that the knowledge we develop in secret can save lives in public," General Rios explained. "We want you to bridge that gap." Anya accepted without a moment's hesitation. Her life as a ghost was over. "Can I still fly the experimental stuff?" she asked. General Rios smiled. "More than ever. But now you'll also be teaching the world what you learn." 6 months later, Anya stood on a small platform behind a lectern at the FAA's primary training center, addressing a room full of grizzled, veteran airline captains. "The protocols you're about to learn," she said, her amplified voice filling the auditorium, "were developed for aircraft that are not expected to survive. They are for moments when your checklists run out, when your training fails, and when all you have left is physics." She used the Flight 447 incident as her core lesson, breaking down every decision, explaining the science behind maneuvers that had, until now, been purely theoretical for commercial jets. "When I walked into that cockpit," she explained, using a laser pointer on a vast schematic of the A320, "I had never even been in an Airbus simulator, but I understood the principles of unpowered flight dynamics. That knowledge is what we're going to give you." The pilots, initially skeptical, were soon mesmerized by her encyclopedic knowledge and her unnervingly simple explanations of complex concepts. A captain for a major international airline, a man with 25,000 hours of flight time, asked, "How did you stay so calm? Most adults would have frozen." Anya shrugged, a gesture so perfectly childlike it was almost comical. "In my other job, panic is not an option. When you fly planes that are designed to break, you get very good at not being surprised when they do." The NOVA protocols she developed became the new global standard for emergency flight training. Within a year, 3 separate incidents that would have previously resulted in catastrophic hull loss were averted by pilots using her techniques. Anya Nova Petrova was saving lives without ever leaving the ground. She continued her work with Project Stardust, a living bridge between the classified world and the public good. 2 years after the incident, a 14-year-old Anya was appointed the youngest ever special advisor to the Air Force Chief of Staff. At the ceremony, Captain Evans and First Officer Chen were in the front row. "Anya didn't just save our flight," Captain Evans said. "She changed the fundamental way we think about safety." Major Gallo and Captain Rostova, the F-16 pilots, were now lead instructors in the joint military-civilian program she had created. "Flying with Nova was the honor of my career," Major Gallo stated. She taught all of us that the mission isn't just about protecting secrets, it's about protecting people. 5 years after that fateful flight, a 17-year-old Anya Petrova stood before Congress to receive the Congressional Gold Medal, the youngest recipient in history. The consultant who had sat beside her on Flight 447 was there. She looked like just a kid, he told a reporter, but she was the calmest person on that plane. She was a hero hiding in plain sight. Today, at 19, Anya is finishing her doctorate in aerospace engineering at Caltech, while serving as a key advisor to both the FAA and the Department of Defense. Her story is a core part of the curriculum at the Air Force Academy. In her office, there is only one framed picture from Flight 447. It shows her in seat 21B, lost in her graphic novel, A Quiet Girl with a Purple Backpack. It's a reminder that the most extraordinary abilities can hide behind the most ordinary faces, and that when the sky is falling, a hero can be anyone with the knowledge, the courage, and the will to fly. Make sure to subscribe to Skybound Stories and check out our other amazing stories by clicking the videos on your screen right now.